When a box the size of an actual hobbit drops on your table with these 4 words on it, your heart will rightfully skip a beat and your brain will abandon all reason, because you know that no matter what, you are going on an adventure.
Is it a good adventure though? Because I think my heart did skip a beat and I'd like to call the doctors.
Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth, in terms of ideas, is incredibly ambitious. The core box comes with a campaign of 12 scenarios, but not only is there an app to take on the role of the Dungeon Master, that same app will let you create characters, choose equipment, name your party. I said name your party. Moving right on. Each adventure you play, the app will not only generate a brand new map for it, it will also seed it with different encounters. Not only taking into account your party size, but also the characters that you chose to bring along, making it a box that you can play forever. And ever. And ever.
And if you're thinking, wait a minute, this sounds like Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition, a game you've reviewed 3 years ago, and to that I say, yes. The similarities, in fact, are abundant to the point where sometimes this game feels like the greatest hits album of Fantasy Flight Games mechanisms. Players will select a character, obviously this time they are Lord of the Rings flavored, like Aragorn, Grumbly, Legoland, or Billy Bob Baggins. Then you'll equip them with items which do different things depending on how many success symbols you can feed into them, and the app will tell you which initial tiles to place, and various points of interest represented with search, person, and Fred Tolkien's. That's right, I said Tolkien's. I made a pun. So sue me. You won't immediately know what you'll need to do, but the story will give you leads, much like that time when Gandalf told Frodo, all you need to do is just take this ring to Rivendell, and that's it. That's all you need to do. You'll be fine. You certainly won't suffer so much trauma that by the end of it, you will feel like you're not at home in this world anymore, and you'll need to leave. As you uncover clues, more tiles will get added, and sometimes enemies will appear. If you fight them, you can suffer 2 kinds of damage, that being fear and damage, making it also easy to distinguish between fear damage and damage. Whenever you suffer a damage, fear, or damage, you will draw a card from the respective deck, and most frequently it'll just instruct you to flip it back face down, in which case it'll serve as that type of damage, being fear or damage, or sometimes it'll stay face up and be very pesky indeed. Eventually, you'll discover what your objective is and will have to trundle your way through tests that will challenge one of your 6 skills. Can the mighty Gimli lift this rock to see what's underneath it? No, son, because Gimli is very tired and he just needs to take a rest. Oh, so tired. Hey, one final brief interruption to let you know that the No Pun Included Kickstarter campaign is live and is going to be live for just another 3 days. If you've been watching No Pun Included for the last year and enjoyed it and observed just how much we've grown and improved, then you might want to consider backing us. And if you've already done so, then thank you very, very much. Somewhere in the corner of the screen, there's going to be an eye that will take you to our campaign page, and you can check out some very cool rewards. I'm very proud of the rewards we've arranged for you this year, because they're all things that we're gonna personally make to send to you, digitally or even physically. And most importantly, we haven't yet met our first stretch goal, which is for Elaine to go part-time, and that one is incredibly important to us. So if you want to help us out, if you want to throw us a couple of quid, please consider checking out the campaign page and pledging. Thank you very much. Back to the video.
But that's where the similarities end. In Mansions of Madness, you never know quite how much time you have left to solve the riddle, with the end sometimes abruptly creeping up on you. Now, you've got a clearly visible threat track telling you you've been procrastinating too long, and that paper on how to kill a goblin, it's due in 2 cans of Red Bull. you better get killing. It's not just a quality of life adjustment because you can't have tracks in board games and not gamify them. Each round you'll generate a number of threat based on how many characters are in your party, the amount of unexplored areas you have on the map, and how many threat tokens sit there just taunting you. Obviously, the less threat that you generate each round, the longer you will have to figure out how to win this thing, which makes people make some strange decisions.
Elaine, do you want to help me fight this troll? Because I think it's going to kill me.
I think I'm just going to go off to the other side of the map and explore. Dwarves are, after all, natural sprinters.
No, seriously, it's going to kill me. You need to stay.
The threat track will cheerily remind you that if you reach a certain threshold, then something bad will happen, adding a touch of tension and trepidation to constantly remind you that something nasty lurks around the corner. But you still can't help but want to take a peek. And talking of losing, if you lose, that's it, you've lost. Because the scenarios are strung together in a campaign, you can't just go back and Groundhog Day it all over again. You have to take the loss and move on to play the next scenario. You have to live with the choices you've made, even if they've led you to failure.
Then there's Elena and Beravor, two characters Lord of the Rings fans won't recognise. At first, I thought it was jarring to have an odd mix of faces, such as Legolas, and then this lady that for some reason is not Elwyn. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Journeys in Middle-earth is a game that wants you to feel like you are going on an adventure, and this character that you make is yours. It became even more apparent once I realized that once you pick a character, you can give them any class. So if you pick Gimli, you could make him a Guardian, which is the recommended class, or you could even make him a burglar, if for some reason that made sense. Whatever character you pick, you get to flesh them out, and whether it's a familiar face that you're going to blend yourself into, or someone that you get to come up with stories for by yourself. Which brings us to the most important change. No more dice. That's right, like before, each time the game challenges you with a test, you'll need a number of successes. Pushing down a statue might require might. If your might is 3, instead of just rolling 3 dice and seeing how many successes you get, you draw 3 cards from your personal deck. Each success symbol is a success, each inspiration symbol can become a success if you spend an inspiration token. That's already much more interesting than rolling dice. You know your deck's composition, you know the number of cards in it, and you know the number of successes. You can see how many cards there are in the discard pile. You can constantly evaluate the always changing odds. But to put an extra little spin on it, each card comes with abilities.
Oh yeah, abilities. As in, you get to do extra cool stuff. But not when you reveal them, that would be too easy. At the end of each round you get to reset, where you pick up your discard pile and your deck and shuffle them all together, and then you get to scout. That means drawing 2 cards, having a good look, and then, if they want to, preparing one of them. That card is no longer circulating through your deck, but will have an ability that is either always active or can be activated by discarding it, returning it to regular circulation. And what's more, the card that you haven't prepared can either go on the top or the bottom of your deck. There's so many interesting decisions that spring from that. At first it might feel like a no-brainer to prepare any cards with no symbols and just stack all the successes on the top. But the more likely a card will lead you to success, the better the ability on it. If you play Beravor as the Pathfinder and you discard a card with Sprint, you can move one for free. And then you get to scout for free because of her action. And then if you prepared another card with Sprint, you can discard that too and move again. And with any luck, you've traversed like half the map and you've not even spent an action. As if that were not enough, each class has an extra deck of cards that you can purchase with experience points as you go through the campaign. It's not quite deck building, but you do get to alter your suite of skills in minor ways, decide if you want an extra success in your deck or just a repeat of something your character's really good at. And the more players you play with, the more fun it gets as you coordinate each other's abilities to swiftly deal with any task that might feel initially insurmountable. Someone will help with preparing more cards, another person will pepper you with inspiration tokens while you teleport your friends across the map to swing an axe into a giant troll. In its best moments, Journeys in Middle-earth is exhilarating, fast, clever, and very rewarding.
Folks, what we have here is an update on a beloved game that has been zhuzhed up and is now mechanically more vigorous, has a universally compelling theme, comes chock-a-block with adventures, and lets you yell, "And my axe!" more frequently than Tom Vassell changes hats. Surely all that's left to do here is to recommend it. Right? Let's get to it. The first problem with Journeys in Middle-earth is monsters. Even at a quick glance, the variety comes across as lacking, but once you start playing, you'll eventually realize that actually, it's not the number of different types of miniatures you have that's going to be the issue. Attacking something works like regular tests. Your weapons have skills you can use them with, so you test them, see how many successes you can get, and then convert those successes into hits, and subtract them from a monster's health. Then, if the monster isn't dead and hasn't acted yet, it will hit you back with a combination of fear damage and damage. And when I say that's it, I really mean that's it. Sure, there's a little bit of difference. For example, a goblin could have a bow, which makes it a ranged attacker, or a monster could have armor, which is a different type of hit point, or a monster could have sorcery, which, believe it or not, is just a different type of armor, or a monster could be an elite, which means it attacks back more frequently. But if you ask me to distinguish between a goblin and a warg and a ruffian and a wight, I'd be forced to admit that they're just differently sized and slightly unsanitary sponges. Teasingly, the app will tell you that some monsters are ruthless or wary, but it all just adds health or more damage. And I don't want to be too disparaging, because the card play mechanism is still clever and lets you engage with the monsters in your own way. It's just that those ways start wearing thin very quickly. Soon any monster just becomes a distraction, an artificial obstacle with no character that's put in front of your objective, and it just makes me think it's a missed opportunity.
And the adventures. There's nothing quite as disappointing as admitting that not much about the story feels like a Lord of the Rings story. Sure, it's mechanically representative of the films. For example, when Gimli attacks, he can put one card from that test back on top of his deck, meaning that the more he attacks, the more that he can potentially pass tests that turn, fueling those crazy jump into a bucket of enemies and keep swinging your axe moments. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the story itself, and I'll give it props in that it gets the tone and the nouns right, but otherwise just feels like typical fantasy fair reskin to be Middle-earthian. And I guess that's to be expected from a board game, but honestly, after 7 games, I can't recall more than maybe 2 moments that were any kind of memorable. Every time we engage with an element, we were excited to see what we would uncover. What will I get if I talk to this person? What's inside the locked chest? What will I see if I climb up on top of this roof? 70% of the time, it's inspiration. A token. Over and over and over again. And the funny thing is, the inspiration tokens feel like the least inspired part of this whole game. Whereas, in Mansions of Madness, within half an hour of any given adventure, you'd be armed with a shovel, a shotgun, a mystical tome, and a bundle of dynamite. Journeys is stingy. If you're lucky, you will at most get 1 new item per adventure. And whereas in Mansions you use the item as part of the solution to whatever puzzle you are trying to solve, in Journeys you get, well, rope. You see, Journeys can't give you more than that. Because of the campaign structure, everything you get you can keep. So it solves that by not giving you things. And remember, there's the threat, so you can't just bimble about exploring every token, and sometimes you will miss the more rewarding encounters, and the less players you have, the more likely that is to happen. So likely, in fact, that in our first 5 games we didn't get a single new item. Yeah. Structurally, adventures are hit and miss as well. Sometimes they'll fire off, especially if they're of the second variety. Oh yeah, we forgot to tell you, there are 2 types of adventures. The regular ones that will let you explore a large area, and the battle adventures that really zero in on a location and feel tighter, smoother, and more like a puzzle that you need to solve. The journey-style adventures feel just a touch too abstract, clicking on things, passing tests, until you find the right encounter that will let you progress. At times you feel like you're you're wandering aimlessly with nothing to do, and then in a flash of a hobbit's pan, it erupts into a nightmare of unexplored tiles and monsters, like someone has dumped a nest of bees on your head. Go on, F, could do the bee thing, the bee bit, you know.
Oh crap, I forgot to order the bees on Amazon.
Bees or no bees, I could keep going, but I don't have to, because Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth can be summed up by one simple observation. Each game has that penny drop moment where the mystique of the new wears off and you peek behind the curtain just a little bit. In a great game, that's not even noticeable. You carry on as if nothing has happened. But in this game, not only is that moment noticeable, it comes far too soon. That card game mechanism that we've raved about and still love soon becomes so central to the experience that everything else falls off because it doesn't stand up to it. Like a leg of lamb that's been stewing in the pot for far too long, and now all you're left with is the bone. The monsters and the stories become superfluous set dressings as you're flipping frantically through your deck trying to find fleeting successes. And at a price point of £90, I don't care how many adventures are in this box if none of them make me feel engaged, although some of them certainly did try. No spoilers.
And yeah, I still think there will be a lot of people who enjoy this game simply on the merit of being a Lord of the Rings game and a mechanically tighter version of Mansions of Madness. And if you think you're going to engage with that not quite a deck builder constant loop with push your luck and decent miniatures and often excellent artwork, even though it is frequently recycled from the Lord of the Rings living card game, for £90, who am I to tell you otherwise? But in the wake of campaign game after campaign game, I think it's important to be just a touch more critical. The thing about campaign games is that they have to fire on so many levels, and Journeys in Middle-earth certainly comes close, certainly closer than some previous attempts. I'm looking at you, Gen 7, but it sits in this odd place where if you want a really crunchy dungeon crawler, then I'd still recommend Imperial Assault over it, even if the story is significantly weaker. Or if you want that really zany, puzzly, app-driven experience, then Mansions of Madness is much cheaper and more memorable than this. And, of course, I won't recommend Gloomhaven because that would be ridiculous. This game is aimed at an entirely different market and it would be gauche. Even if Gloomhaven is the best campaign game ever. Normally at this stage we'd recommend alternative viewing material, but for once we're one of the first few with a video on this game. However, if you enjoy painting miniatures, Mark Sorastro already has a tutorial on how to paint some of the game's monsters and we highly recommend it. Not only is Mark an excellent painting teacher, but he also composes his own music for each tutorial. If that's not worth a watch, then I don't know what is. And that's it. That's Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle-earth. Of course, you didn't listen to a single thing I said and already bought the game anyway, because it's Lord of the Rings from Fantasy Flight Games. I understand that, but I think you need to think about what you've done. So I'm going to leave you here with your thoughts while you ponder it and hit the subscribe button. So goodbye. Goodbye. You forgot to subscribe, so do it now, right now.